the living dead, the deceased, walkers, the infected. These are all terms to describe what's known as zombies. In pop culture, there are many different interpretations of zombies, of course in media, video games, and obviously Magic the Gathering. And in today's video, that's what I will be discussing today, your ultimate guide to zombies in Commander. And how this video will operate, I will first discuss some Commander options that you can choose from, then I will talk about staple cards that are in zombie decks, and then of course talk about the best synergies and combos to run in a zombie deck. And of course where we do have to start out with is picking the right commander for your strategy. There are numerous options to choose from when it comes to zombie legendaries, but if you want to focus specifically on zombies in your deck, here's some options that you can choose from that have the best synergy with them. Zombies typically reside in the demure color combination of black and blue. Of course there's other colors that could fit into the mix, but these are what utilize zombies the most. So the first one I wanted to highlight is the Scarab God, and this one hails from Amonkhet, and please Wizards, please let us go back to Amonkhet. I love that plane so much, we need to revisit it again. The Scarab God acts as a zombie commander, but doesn't necessarily need zombies in the deck. So it does read for 3 blue and a black. It's a legendary creature god, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Plus you can pay 2 blue and a black, exile target creature card from a graveyard, any kind of graveyard, whether it's your opponent's or your own graveyard. You create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Plus when it does die, return to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So I mentioned previously that you don't necessarily need zombies in the deck because you could just generate zombies as long as there's cards in the graveyard that are creatures. But you will get that added bonus: the more zombies you do have on the battlefield, the more opponents will lose life at the beginning of your upkeep, and you could scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. To me, that warrants enough where it can be a great zombie commander, because you can make a lot of opponents lose a decent amount of life. So this one is quite a popular pick. I actually love this card so much. I don't actually have my own deck of it, but I think it's a very fun card that you can use as a zombie commander. But let's move on to another classic zombie commander with Verena the Lich Queen. What makes this one a little better than the Scarab God, at least in my opinion, is the fact that it adds an extra color of white. So this commander does read for 1 white, blue, and a black. Legendary creature, zombie wizard. Whenever you attack with 1 or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards, so you gain that much life. Plus you can pay 2, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, create 2 tap 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So this commander is quite powerful in the aspect where you could draw cards, discard cards, and then later on, if you have the mana, you could just constantly make 2/2s on the battlefield. Plus the advantage of having white in your deck instead of just a mere color combination is the fact that you could add token doublers like Anointed Procession. Plus she does have a 4/4 body, which is a pretty sizable rate at 4 mana. So I believe if you're going to go for any zombie option, this would be one of the better choices, at least in my opinion. It is doing everything for you. It's drawing cards, putting cards into your graveyard, gaining you life, and on top of that making more zombies for you. So what's not to like about this commander? But now let's move on. Let's talk about the Fallout universe. They brought a lot of good zombie commanders like Jason Bright, Glowing Prophet, and Hancock Ghoulish Mayor. So these commanders are quite interesting in what they do. Jason Bright does read whenever a zombie or mutant you control dies. If its power was different from its base power, you draw a card. Also you can pay 2, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. So this is quite interesting. You could go into a 1/1 counter theme and also a little bit of a sacrifice theme in mono blue, which is kind of unique in that aspect. I also like the idea that you could put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control and it gains flying. So that way if you have some creature that has a combat trigger or any kind of trigger, like an attack trigger, you could give it some sort of evasion so you don't have to worry about it dying in combat. Hancock is basically a great overrun ability for all your zombies. Each other creature you control that's a zombie or a mutant gets +X/+X, where X is the number of counters on Hancock Ghoulish Mare. Plus it does have Undying. So this is quite powerful. I think it's probably better in the 99 of your zombie decks because it's basically just a super anthem for all your zombies. But it is an option if you want to go that route. Since it will be Halloween soon, let's talk about Innistrad and some of the commanders from there that focus on zombies. Some of you are probably familiar with Gisa as a character in Innistrad, and of course she's all about zombies. There are many different iterations of Gisa that I could talk about. Let's talk about Ghoul Color Gisa first. For 3 and 2 black, legendary creature, human wizard. You pay a black and tap her, sacrifice another creature, create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is a sacrificed creature's power. And so this one is okay. It's not the greatest one in the world, I prefer Gisa the Hellraiser. This one is absolutely crazy. Same mana cost of 5, legendary creature, human warlock. Has a pretty insane ward ability of paying 2 mana and pay 2 life. Skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. Whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if you have a lot of spot removal or a lot of different ways of targeting opponents or creatures they control, or even cards in their graveyard, you're going to be making a lot of 2/2 zombies. Plus Gisa is an anthem for your zombies and you could give a menace as well. So this one is quite literally powerful in my opinion. Gisa is not the only one making zombies though. There is also Geralf, her brother. There are many different iterations like her sister. Stitch Geralf is pretty good for 3 and 2 blue legendary creature, human wizard. You can pay 2 and blue and tap it. Each player mills 3 cards, exile up to 2 creature cards put into the graveyards this way. Create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the total power of cards exiled this way. But this one's pretty simple like the first iteration of Gisa. It just has a tap ability. Players will mill cards and you could exile any of 2 creatures in the graveyards and then put a big giant creature on the battlefield depending on how much power it did have. Another version of Geralf that I would like to highlight is Geralf Visionary Stitcher. This is basically an anthem for all your zombies, giving them flying. He does have a tap ability by paying blue and tap it, sacrifice another non-token creature, create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So instead of milling like its previous iteration, this one focuses on basically sacrificing a non-token creature so that way you can make a blue zombie on the battlefield. But I would say the best iteration of Geralf would be Geralf the Fleshright. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn other than the first spell that turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. Whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each zombie that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So pretty much this is just Zombie Storm. You're trying to cast a lot of spells so that you can have more zombies enter with +1/+1 counters. I played against this before and this is pretty mean, not gonna lie, because this just focuses on a lot of cantrips and also some zombie synergies, and this could get out of control really fast. But of course we gotta have Gisa and Geralf on this list because of course they partnered together, at least in this card specifically. For 2 blue and a black, when they enter, you mill 4 cards. During each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature spell from your graveyard. So this one is pretty simple but pretty effective because the more zombies you do have in your graveyard, you can essentially just cast them. Basically your graveyard is also your hand too, because the more zombies you do have, at least in the graveyard, the more you can cast them later on. But I would say out of all the zombie commanders that you could choose from, Wilheld the Rock Cleaver is one incredible commander. For 2 blue and a black, it's legendary creature zombie warrior. Whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a zombie. If you do, you draw a card. This is quite powerful because if you notice with the first line, whenever a zombie you control dies, it doesn't specify a non-token zombie or a token zombie. Any kind of zombie, as long as it didn't have Decayed, you're gonna make another 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. So that is pretty neat. There's also some combo potential that you can take advantage of with Puppet Stitcher on the backside, but I'm not gonna focus on that one specifically. I mainly wanted to focus on the commander because it's quite powerful. It's a card draw engine and it could basically replace your zombies that died as long as they didn't have Decayed. So those are some of the zombie commanders that you can choose from to make a deck around, but let's talk about zombie staples to put in your commander deck specifically. There are some lord effects like Diagraphed Captain, Lord of the Accursed, Death Baron, and Cemetery Reaper, which all give other zombie creatures you control +1/+1. When you have a horde of zombies on the battlefield, you'll want to make sure that you can buff them up as much as you can to deal more damage to your opponents. Each of them have a specific ability outside of that lord effect. For example, with Diagraphed Captain, it has that other ability. Whenever another zombie you control dies, the target opponent loses 1 life. Same can be said for Death Baron. It also gives zombies you control +1/+1 and Death Touch. A lot of people may not want to attack into you or block one of your zombies because of course they will have Death Touch, so you could probably go through for some combat damage. Lord of the Accursed has that extra benefit. All zombies gain menace until end of turn when you tap it and pay into that mana cost. And my personal favorite, Cemetery Reaper, has that great ability by paying 2 and a black, exile target creature card from a graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So for one, this acts as graveyard hate because you can exile a target creature card from a graveyard one of your opponents. If they're playing a Reanimator deck, that could definitely hose them. All the while you get to make a zombie token on the battlefield on your side. So if you are running a zombie deck, you must have these cards in the deck because they'll just do wonders for you. If you do want to go a step further on that lord ability, Undead War Chief is a little bit more, but obviously does more for you because zombie spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so it's that cost reducing effect. Plus, instead of getting +1/+1 like the previous card, zombie creatures you control get +2/+1, so that's an added extra benefit. On top of that, it doesn't say other zombie creatures you control, it says zombie creatures, so it does include itself. So instead of being a 1/1, it'll actually be a 3/2. Another staple in zombie decks would be Diagraphed Colossus. This is incredible in a zombie zombie deck for 3 mana. It enters with 1/1 counters on it for each zombie card in your graveyard, which is going to be very easy to do because if you're sacrificing zombies, putting them in the graveyard, most likely it's going to enter with a lot of 1/1 counters on it. Plus, when you do cast zombie spells, you create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token in addition to that, so that way you can amass your horde of zombies more and more to overwhelm your opponent. Some other options I would like to highlight is Relentless Dead, along with Cryptbreaker. These are easily another great include for zombie decks too. With Cryptbreaker, it's only 1 mana. You can pay 1 black and tap and discard a card, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. You could also tap 3 untapped zombies you control, you draw a card and you lose 1 life, so this is a great way of getting cards into your hand. Along with Relentless Dead, for 2 black mana for a 2/2 body with Menace. When it does die, you may pay a black mana. When you do, return it to its owner's hand. And when it does die, you may pay X. If you do, return another target zombie creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this will help basically just put more zombies from your graveyard to the battlefield when it does die. Also, you can return it to your hand too, so there's that added benefit. But if you want an absolute flavor win, Zombie Apocalypse is absolutely incredible. Return all zombie creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then destroy all humans. Obviously, that's a huge flavor win because it's always zombies versus humans. You can also throw in Army of the Damned. It is quite expensive at 8 mana, but you put 13 2/2 black zombie creature tokens on the battlefield tapped, and it does have flashback too, so this is obviously more of a flavor win than a powerful card. So if you notice so far in this part of the video, I talked about black color identity cards that fit in with the zombie type, simply because that's the most used colors with zombies. But we can dive into some blue color identity cards. For example, Necroduality is one amazing card in a zombie deck. Whenever another non-token zombie enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature, so this is absolutely perfect for the deck. You're just amassing your horde more and more and putting more zombies on the battlefield, especially if you have those abilities to give your creatures +1/+1. Now they will have +2/+2 instead. Another great card that does have some combo potential is Rooftop Storm. For 5 and a blue, you may pay 0 mana rather than pay the mana cost of zombie creature spells you cast. And so that's any zombies that are in your hand. So if you have a lot of zombies in your hand, well, guess what? You just put them all on the battlefield and you could wreak havoc. Another auto include in all zombie decks that do have the color identity of blue is Hordewing Scab. For 4 and a blue, it does have flying, and other zombies you control have flying, so that's that static effect. All zombies you control, especially if you have a lot of them, will have flying in that evasion to swing at your opponents. Plus, on top of that, whenever 1 or more zombies you control deal combat damage to 1 or more of your opponents, you may draw cards equal to the number of opponents dealt damage this way. If you do, discard that many cards. So that way you can kind of refill your hand and discard the cards you don't necessarily need that turn. Another amazing card would be Cleaver Scab. For 3 and a blue, you can pay 3 and tap it, sacrifice another zombie, create 2 tokens that are copies of the sacrificed creature. So again, if you have those lords on the battlefield, you could sacrifice one of them and then 2 more will be in its place. Something to note about this card, you can sacrifice another zombie. It doesn't say you can sacrifice a non-token zombie. So those tokens you keep making, you could just constantly make more and more of those tokens that are the same type. So that way, if you have a lord on the battlefield, you could constantly make more of those, buffing up all your zombies. So typically, Demir color combination is the best color combination for zombies, but there are some white zombies that I did want to follow up with. First of all, God Eternal Oketra will put a lot of zombies on the battlefield for you as long as you're casting more creature spells. You can make an additional 4/4 black zombie creature token with Vigilance when you cast that creature spell. And I think another perfect fit, if a lot of zombies are entering the battlefield, Corpse Knight will be perfect because whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. This can be a part of some combo shenanigans I'll talk about later, but this one is another excellent choice to drain your opponents little by little. The same can be said for Wayward Servant. This is essentially the same thing, but you gain life, and it's specific to zombies. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is a little better than the previous one because obviously we are focusing on zombies. But like I mentioned with Verena, the best part about having that commander is having the white color identity to have token doublers like Anointed Procession. These are going to be key, especially if you put a lot of tokens on the battlefield to keep doubling your zombies and putting more on the battlefield, overwhelming your opponents essentially. So now that I've talked about staples, I want to focus now on combo potential because obviously there's a lot of ways to win with zombies specifically. Probably one of the best combos that you could take advantage of in your deck is using Gravecrawler and Phyrexian Altar. Each one of those are not dead cards, and if you do have a Blood Artist effect in the deck too, it's going to be spelling good game for your opponents. And of course, if you have the white color combination in your deck too, Wayward Servant can get the job done for you. You don't necessarily need to put a Blood Artist in your deck to get the job done. As long as you have another zombie on the battlefield, Gravecrawler can be played from the graveyard to the battlefield. You could use the Phyrexian Altar mana to sacrifice it again, go over and over again, make an infinite loop. All the while, Wayward Servant has that ability whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This one everybody already knows, so I didn't want to go over too much. You can replace Phyrexian Altar with Warren Soul Trader. This actually does the same exact thing. You do lose 1 life in the process, but if you have Wayward Servant servant on the battlefield or another blood artist, you negate that one lost life. Another combo, I slightly touched on this, is Willhead the Rock Cleaver with Poppet Stitcher. As long as Poppet Stitcher is switched to the backside Poppet Factory, creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. So that'll come in handy, especially with that creature tokens lose all abilities, because with Willhead it has that ability whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. So this is very similar to the Gravecrawler type ability. If you do have like a blood artist and a sacrifice outlet, you can constantly sacrifice the zombies, and because they don't have Decayed anymore, because they're base power and toughness 3/3 with no abilities, you could go through a loop of sacrificing them over and over again and drain your opponents for victory. Another combo that's quite obscure is using Rot Hulk, Necroduality, and Carrion Feeder, or another card that sacrifices a creature. The only downside to this combo is the fact that Rot Hulk is very hard to find and is quite expensive. Rot Hulk has that ability when it enters the battlefield, return up to X target zombie creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents you control. So basically 3 zombies you could return to the battlefield. But with Necroduality, you make an extra copy, and in response to all those triggers, you could sacrifice the original Rot Hulk so that you could return it to the battlefield with that other. You can repeat that process by sacrificing Rot Hulk over and over again, because Necroduality is constantly going to be making more and more token copies of Rot Hulk. You can put a huge giant army of Rot Hulks on the battlefield, and you can try to wait a turn to swing at your opponents, but most likely they'll try to find a board wipe in the process so they don't lose. So again, if you have one of those blood artist effects, and because the Rot Hulk is constantly dying, you could drain all your opponents for a victory that way. So those are some combos that you can run in the deck. Obviously there's some other ones that you could choose from, but those are the most notable ones that I find personally enjoyable because they involve zombies. So with all that said, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on your guide to zombies in Commander. With the Halloween season, there's so much other creature types to choose from. In my Discord, this was the most voted for me to make a video on as far as a guide to creature types goes. If you do want to check out the Discord, you can check it out down below in the description if you want to have your voice heard. Plus, if you do want to support my work even further, consider being a patron. There's a lot of great benefits for you if you want to join. But if you don't want to, I completely understand. Another way in supporting me is like, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. And with all that stuff out of the way, thank you for stomping by.